Transferable skills.
From Cackle Media, this is Transferable Skills. I'm Noah Mishkin. Today's guest is Eli Lebowicz, who shares his skills journey from stadium concession vendor into stand-up comedy. You wouldn't know it from pretty much any episode prior to this one, but I happen to be a comedy nerd. That doesn't mean that I fancy myself a comedian or that I think I'm funny. What it means is I have a deep appreciation, maybe even love for comedy. This is going to be a wildly different episode than any others, both because of the subject matter, but also because unlike most of these interviews that we record for between an hour to an hour and a half, this one went on for 3 hours. The conversation meanders a lot. It's not as linear as most of them, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. And with that, I hope you really enjoy this episode. I would love to do like a personality assessment specifically for like curated content and comedy for me. I would love to figure out the science behind understanding why I prefer certain types of comedy. There are plenty of comedians that I know are good comedians, very successful, have a huge crowd, and I'm just like, meh.
I think it's the school of style of there's the Jim Gaffigan, Nate Bargatze, Jerry Seinfeld, Gary Goldman, that tier of...
You're naming my top 5.
They're taking, I'm not taking this seriously, but they're writing like very...
There's an intentionality.
Yeah, there's an exact, almost like a Greg Maddox pitching situation where like there is such a perfect...
That is also such a great reference.
The precision of it. And it may, you know what it is also? It's I feel like it's an ideal that like...
But you know that Chris Rock is doing the same thing. He just has a way of, I think, being able to... I think improvisation in either his literal delivery of it or the phraseology in that moment might just be a little more flexible and loose.
It's
like, I saw Chris Rock last year and I laughed really hard. I think I cried. I love his comedy, but he's not my go-to. He's not in my top 10. And I know that's a little sacrilegious because he's considered like one of the greatest comedians. And there's plenty of others on that list too, where when I watch or I listen, I'm so happy. I love it.
I'm actually not. I am not the biggest Chris Rock fan. The time and place, I wasn't there. Like Bigger or Blacker, I don't know, it was 97 and I'm like 8.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm too young for this.
I was a little older than you. I still am a little older than you, incidentally, but I was of age when that came out. I remember the first time I heard Eddie Murphy's Raw, and I saw it before I saw Delirious out of sequence, but like that stand-up it changed my life as a fan.
Yeah, I think I had that with Seinfeld. I'm telling you for the last time. Probably.
It was exactly the same experience like that too. It was 99. I remember when it either came out or that's when I think it was around that time it came out. I discovered it. I spent the next year listening to it on tape and just over and over.
July 3rd. How do they know? How do they know? How do they
That's the exact day.
That's your goddamn random. But yeah, because I'm all younger than you, not to brag, but
I can tell.
No, you can't though. I've done shows with I've done shows with Elon Golden, and I'm like, he's 19 years older than me, but I look 19 years older than him. So, but like, no, I'm saying like Eddie Murphy. The same thing with like Steve Martin. It's a different time, a little different of a time period. But Eddie Murphy to me is like Dr. Dolittle, and like I just don't have. I watched Dakota Lee, Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, like clips or something like that, but like. I don't have Eddie Murphy the comedian as in my zeitgeist. Steve Martin.
You see him as like
Dr. Dolittle.
That Dr. Dolittle.
These kind of crappy movies that were just like, oh, this guy was like.
Yeah, you didn't watch 48 Hours. You didn't watch.
I did eventually, but like. My biggest gap of pop culture knowledge in a lot of ways is like the 80s movies that are like. I have some of them in there, like Ferris Bueller and stuff like that. But again, I'm born in '89, so I'm technically I'm the '90s kid, and I still say a kid. But so yeah, that's the But the point is that your level, even if back to Chris Rock point, is that there's a certain way of delivery of these comedians versus your Sebastian Maniscalco's, Brian Regan's, the Dane Cook. There's a physicality. Yes. They're performing it.
Bill Burr, by the way, among many things he has masterfully figured out, he is so good at being so blunt, transparent, and especially on racial comedy. It's so funny. He has built up this, I don't want to say acceptance. It's just like he knows exactly how to nail the thing that we feel uncomfortable about, and then name it and then exploit it. He's so good at that stuff.
I think he's really fearless in that, in a lot of ways, in that regard.
He's like embodies the book, The Art of Not Giving a F. Like he is that kind of guy. And I have so much respect for him in that sense, because I almost get the sense that he worked so hard to be a stand-up comedian and tried and hustled and felt at some point that something wasn't clicking or wasn't working. And he almost said, F this. And then he just said whatever he wanted to say and started doing it. I don't know if any of this is true, but that's like the sense that that's the old.
That was Louis C.K. Louis C.K. talks about that origin.
Really?
Louis C.K. talks about
that's how he got better?
How, I don't know, I forgot where I heard him talking about this, but he basically was saying that for years he was like a failing, middling stand-up comedian to be like, here, plain food. Or like just random observations.
Right.
And then he was just like deeper and deeper and deeper, where he's, okay, you talk about that, okay, what's below that layer? But he kind of just like saying like, I gotta dig deeper than this into it, and that's when he really hit, because he was more talking about
authentic.
Not authentic, like talking about real stuff.
He's talking about real things that are relatable, but there's an authenticity. I have seen cuts of him do the exact same bit on multiple stages, and so he has perfected the art of saying a very specifically rehearsed, designed statement in a way that sounds like he's making it up off the cuff.
I think we got to do this once a week, just for both of our.
We should. I'm telling you,
this is our meditation.
I would love.
I also just need more people in my life or things in my life that get out the inner muse in me.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things is that, because like we're both have like families, and we were talking about this the other day, that like switching hats basically, and that's such a challenging thing that I'm like, I wish I could be this like playful and this fun and this spontaneous and extemporaneous, like
reckless.
Yeah, and not reckless even, no, but even just like riffing ideas and just being able to do that at home and just
here's the reality. The reality is, and I heard this, I think it was a podcast actually a number of years ago. Esther Perel, if you're familiar, relationship author, like I discovered her through a Tim Ferriss show episode, and this is like 10 years ago. Right. She made this observation that really resonates well, that we have become ever more so increasingly in today, certainly more than ever in the past, is not just we're living longer, we're with our spouse longer or our significant other for longer. We also expect that our significant other is fulfilling all of the various needs that we have. So obviously this came up with the idea of intimacy and relationships, and you want to make sure you're compatible and all that. But then she was using that as a springboard to make other observations. Like, this person is supposed to be also an equal participant in caregiving, and this person is also supposed to be an excellent cook, and this person is also supposed to be great at family management and organization, and they're supposed to be your personal therapist, and they're supposed to be the person that likes and enjoys all the same activities as you and interests and hobbies, and they're also supposed to be. So she's saying that like the person that we spend our time with and our lives with is supposed to fulfill all of these overlapping needs, and it's just unrealistic to expect them to be that perfect.
It's like a job description of a nonprofit organization.
Yeah. I thought a lot about how what you're describing is, I wish I could have this kind of dynamic at home, but that's not necessarily the job that she signed up for, or that your kids are ready for, or that they're going to be the best person to bounce.
But maybe I also think like I wish I had this state of mind, and maybe that's controllable, where I'm able to just be this playful and this fun, instead of I just feel like I'm just like the rules guy, which is annoying because it's not like how I am in my other, like the rest of my life in a lot of ways, which again, you have to be wear a different hat as a parent and as a husband and stuff like that, and make sure your kids bathe and brush their teeth, and like you wish you could do it.
But why do you think that you are that different at home?
Because stuff does have to get done, which is tricky. Because when there's stuff that has to get done, you can't just be playful. I know you can't have that relationship with you because your kids are different, and maybe when they're older, I'll be able to have that more. Maybe my kids are just too young, and it's just, no, you gotta like buckle down and do this. I just feel like if I do have that with my kids, where I'm like being fun, then it's like, okay, but like then I have to be like, no, but now it's time to like get in pajamas or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that you're describing what is real to most people. It's a combination of all the things that have to get done, the so to speak chores and parental responsibilities. They feel like a little drag sometimes, mostly because it's literally every day. We don't often make space or provide an opportunity to make space for a vacation from being a parent, which is why I do think it's actually important for anyone, whatever the subject is that is a significant responsibility of yours. It's important in your life and you enjoy doing it, but there comes a burnout. And so I think it's important to find ways to make space and give yourself, so to speak, vacation for an amount of time that is reasonable. During COVID, I sensed this burnout. I was, I don't know, difficult to be around. I was frustrated, I think, as we all were cooped up. And my wife, to her credit, told me, she says, what do you want to do? And I said, I feel like I just need a break. I just need a vacation. And she's great, go do it. I was like, that's not realistic. It's not reasonable. And so she opened her computer. She said, here's a flight to Florida tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Go visit your cousin. She realized it was something I needed. And she was giving me the permission that I didn't think I was able to ask for. It help me realize that if done right and you have the support of your significant other, that you sometimes just need a break, even if it's for a day or two. You can burn out, but the monotony, but also the responsibility and the frustration of just, I told you 3 times to brush your teeth and you haven't done it yet. And now it's 15 minutes past your bedtime. And why are you touching him? And you give him back his basketball and all these things. Like, yeah, it can be a drag, and parenting is a wonderful thing. It doesn't mean that it's always easy and that every moment is enjoyable. And so I think it's important to take a break.
I told this yesterday at the gig I did at the school to like teachers, and I said parenting is so challenging, especially these like modern Instagram people who are kind of just like they come up all over my feed, and it's like you got to talk to them on their level, and you're like, oh, that's great, but like it doesn't always work where it's, hey bud, can you just get in your car seat and buckle up and not have a tantrum right now, because otherwise we're gonna have Shabbos in the parking lot here.
Yeah, and maybe this is a me problem, but the way I would talk to my kids in that moment in the parking lot of the grocery store, asking them politely to get into their car seat and buckle up, while the person who's waiting for me to vacate that parking spot, I don't think I would have that calm, because the urgency that I'm putting on myself and creating for the situation is, let's be considerate of the person who's waiting, hurry up, and I'm just going to do it for you.
I think that's what you said. You said, why are you different with your kids than you are? That's
Correct.
Me too. Of why am I? Because I'm a little bit like, oh my God, I'm being judged right now. My kid's having a tantrum. Like over Passover, I performed at they have different like Passover programs, just to be a stereotype. And there's one in the Bahamas at Atlantis. In order to get to where we were, you have to walk through the casino. And my kid's like walking with those like hands in his flip-flops and whatever. And I'm just like, you're making a scene in front of the degenerate gamblers. Can you stop like right now? And I'm glad I caught myself, but I'm glad I was able to recognize that moment of, I wish I had that clarity.
Yeah.
Brian Regan, I think, says this something like, he's like, my kid's like balancing like the thing on his like chin or on his shoulders. It's like, you're getting pasta on the wall. Can't you see that the walls are more important than the joy in your heart?
Wow. That when he said that, it really cuts so deep into many people like myself, right? Am I freaking out for a legitimate reason right now? Do I really need to be so harsh?
Well, it's tough because we, as much as we pretend we don't care about societal norms, we kind of we do. Even if we say, I don't care. All right, well, do you really care if your kid's wearing a suit jacket to school, even though he's 6 or 7? Which right. My son does right. that. But like, again, that's the thing. I was thinking about in terms of this conversation of my first job vending at Cubs games. Was like the first, pretty much, it was a big Chicago thing. I don't think people do it so much anymore.
There's a guy actually I'll tag him in the show notes below, but there's a guy who is a vendor and he talks about it. I love his
Jewish Jonah or
material.
something on Instagram.
Exactly.
I'm so jealous because I wish there was that level of social media when I did it. That because I have like
brilliant.
old cameras and I don't have any real footage of it, pictures, and it's such a shame of how many pictures I have. As Jim Gaffigan says, he says I have more pictures of my children than my father ever looked at me, and so at that time of I was from 2005 to 2012, and I was 16 to 22, 23, I was vending at Cubs games. That was my job. Comedy was standing. It was probably the best job I ever had. And I would do it throughout high school, throughout college. And people would be like, don't you want to get an internship? And I'm like, no, my job is to go to baseball games.
I think the problem is society is telling you what they expect of you. And maybe subconsciously, maybe they are aware of it, but they don't want to admit it, that they're envious of the people who are living that kind of dream. I would love to go to every Cubs game and sell beer and just have a great time. It's hard work, but it's also hard work for the right things. It's things that you love and you're outside.
Literally at that one point during day games, I would bike there. It was 6.5 miles from my house. Bike there, park my bike, be there for 4 hours, and then bike back, shower like there's no tomorrow. And then just the joy I got in counting the tips that I had and how much I made that day. This is hard work. I worked really hard. I love this so much. And this in comedy, that in comedy were the two things I'm like, oh, this is something that I've worked at that I'm really good at.
Yeah. For the people listening that don't know, vending specifically at Wrigley Field for the Cubs was a huge kind of rite of passage in the Chicago Jewish community. There's so many people. Most of my friends vended at one point, some for many years. In fact, one of our good friends and neighbors, the Komrovs, the father, the patriarch of the family, who's now in his, I would assume, 70s, is still vending. He's been vending for 40 years. And if you check out the Jewish Jonah's Instagram account, who's the vendor at Wrigley, he just interviewed him, I think yesterday, the day before. And this guy's been vending a long time. And he's held other jobs too, physical education, gym teacher, but he's been doing it for this long because he loves it and it's an amazing job and it provides an interesting lifestyle that is really unique and valuable that most people don't have access to. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, you basically, start at 16, first of all. So that's a nice thing as opposed to being 18. So that was good. So suddenly I'm a sophomore year of high school or something, or for the game, you'd show up 2 hours before the game in this pit area across the street from the stadium, and you'd have to count numbers. They would give you your year in a cup and be like, all right, you're 2005, okay, you're 2005, okay, that means you're between 186 and 215. That
what does that mean, give you your year?
Based on your year, whatever year you started, that was your seniority. So basically people were like, oh, you get to, how do you decide what to get? So it's based on, there were the people who were sold beer, who were born with the stadium, and they would just be there forever. They're just oh, that's Mike, he's a beer vendor. And the guys,
gods among men.
Yeah, the guys who just walked in, just all right, give me Budweiser or whatever. And they would just sell beer and make a killing. So in 2005, I'm the back of the line because I'm the newest. And there's a bunch of people who don't get numbers. So it's based on seniority. You get up to the window and it's a very non-democratic process of what do you want? What's there? We got peanuts, not water, whatever.
Right.
So,
but what's the hierarchy of best things to sell to the worst and why? And is there a strategy behind them?
So beer, it was Budweiser beer versus old style beer. And there was also different commissaries, which areas were better. So it's there's upper deck, lower deck. So lower deck is better because the people who are spending money on lower deck tickets are probably going to tip you more. I never sold beer, which was really a shame because I wasn't 21 yet. You had to be 21.
Yeah.
And that was really because I would have made so much money selling beer. But though in the peak of summer, water, very, very high on if you sold water on a 95-degree day, you're making a killing. And people would do
more than like Pepsi or Coke.
Absolutely, because it was Pepsi. And it was also cups of Pepsi, which is, you would spill so much, and then they switched to bottles, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Especially as people got more healthy, people would drink water. There was one game where it looked like it was a Friday, and it was raining, and then it got nice out, and then they were like, hey guys, we're out of stuff, we don't have anything. And then I'm like, all right. And then one guy was gonna go home anyway, even though he got a ticket to work. He was like, I don't always think it's gonna rain. It was like a Friday, and I was like, can I have your ticket? Like it just says the product, and it was water, and I was like, okay. And I took water, and I made $300. I sold like 15 cases of water that day because it cleared up and got like 85 degrees. And when it's not selling, that is heavy. As much as I love the job, one of the drawbacks is it's like when you're climbing those stairs, that really weighs on you. But when it's selling, you just move. The most I sold with water one time was Tom Glavine's 300th win when he was on the Mets. It was a Sunday night game, and it was like really humid. And
that was late in his career.
It was very late in his career. I sold 24 cases of water, and the guys would do it because it'd be so annoying. You could sell so much, and reloading at the commissary to get more stuff, more product. It sounds like Breaking Bad, but to get more product, you would have to go back out. You have to bring enough money to buy 2 cases.
So you're buying, and then you're essentially reselling.
So the way you basically essentially the way you do it is you bring like $100 with you to start, so that you all of a sudden, and I'm going to go use the example that I was. Well, you need to make change. Yeah, exactly. But you go to the commissary to reload to get your first thing. They give it to you like on loan, essentially the first one, and you get, let's say, 24 cases of water, right? And it's $4 each, or it was at the time. So it's $96. And then you sell it, and then they give you a ticket. You get like a 10% or 15% commission of the product that you sell, which you get a paycheck later. And then you come back and you're like, okay, here, let me get my next case. And then you pay for the first one. So here's $96. Okay, get the next one. Here's $96. And then at the end, if you don't sell them, you don't have to pay that. You pay them back the difference of whatever you don't have left. I did one case of two cases of water at one time in that whole game, and I couldn't move because it's enormously heavy, and it was just going to kill my back and legs, whatever. So I just, you know what, they were moving so quickly, thank God, in the commissary that day. I was able to just rush and go back and forth and just do it. I sold 24 cases. I think the ticket said like $240 commission, and I made $200 in tips. So I'd say beer, water at its peak. Peanuts was really, and Pepsi was like good also. On a hot days also did well, but it's also,
I'm a big fan of the lemon
chills were very good on hot days. So the good thing is, my first year I was able to make it with like products that weren't like the best, but they were good, like chocolate malt ice cream, which are good. From a Wrigley Field fanboy. You're like, oh, it's the best. Also,
but it makes you so thirsty.
It was a pretty sizable size, and it was $2.25. Which
great value.
But a 25-cent item is crucial because you get a 75-cent tip most of the time.
That's a great point on the economics.
It was $2.25. So literally, I would sell 8 cases of this, and then I would get $3, and you're making 75 cents. But in fact, with peanuts, let's say peanuts was $3.25, but there were 36 in a giant pouch. And peanuts was great because it was $3.25 in my time. So a lot of times you would get $5. Yeah, it's light. But here's the problem with peanuts. People don't buy more than 1 bag of peanuts, usually, or they do with their whole group of people. By the time it's like the 3rd inning, they're done. You don't buy peanuts in the 3rd inning because you already have your bag from last year.
Right.
You don't.
With the rubber band around it that you brought from home.
Yeah, they're just whatever. But it got so good, though. I got figured out the formula for peanuts was based on my commission. It would be 36, and I think it was 325. I said I should be making 1.5 times my commission in tips or something like that. It was like I got very good at the math of their water was like I should make like 50% of my commission in tips and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're at home. It's like a beautiful mind. You're like seeing all these numbers.
Yeah, writing it down. I also, the way I would do it, I was always like, I had my chart before I knew how to use Excel, and I would just write things down. I'd be like, how much did I bring? How much did I come home with? And then how much did I spend? And so again, your hierarchy, quick question is beer, water, hot dogs. Hot dogs is very much, which I did for a season or two, and those are it's heavy to carry a sterno oven, but you just bang your little tray. People are like, I'll take 4, I'll take 6, I'll take 3, and you're done.
The advantage of that little sterno oven is that you can use the lid to make noise and draw attention and save yourself a little bit of your voice, like by banging it. Hot dog.
Yes, exactly. You kind of just bang a hot dog, whatever. And
you got the tongs. You can bang it.
It was so easy to sell hot dogs, and I didn't do it a ton. I was only from, I think, like one season or two when I would be like, oh, consistently. I'd be like, I think my first year I made like $80 a game. Second year I made like $110 a game, $100 a game. Third year, because I sold hot dogs the most then, it was like $150 a game. And then and I probably tried to do 40 games a year. But again, it was beer, water, hot dogs, probably Pepsi, peanuts, and then it was like the chocolate malt cups, lemon chills. Again, if it was hot, the lemon chills were great, but at one point they were like $3.75, which is only a quarter of a tip versus $3.25, which is a much more.
It's really, I wonder how many young vendors, I don't mean the ones veterans who've been doing it for 10 to 20 years, but young vendors actually take the time to process the economics. Like you pointed out, the price point and the easy tips that you get from the margin. It's like, here's a $5, keep the change. $3.25, they give you $4, keep the 75 cents extra. So I think that it's more than just weather, temperature, but there's also something about the pricing and something about the economics of what's going to be more enticing and give you the best return.
Yeah, I think it became like a thing people would know. Oh, I'm taking this. You're like, oh, what are you taking? It's like an NFL draft. Who are you taking? Who are you taking? Yeah, all right. And then you like panic, like, oh man, I panicked. I took the wrong thing, and like that could really kind of break you a little bit. But
wait, hold on. Are there examples of an individual who can sell things that typically are not popular because they are really good at it?
Ari Finkel, for example, is a very good example. Or there's like Simon's brothers. There's these people you hear like lore. You're like, oh my God. And you don't even know how accurate it would be.
These guys are moving cotton candy by the pallet.
You're like, oh man, he sold like, and again, from the worst ones, automatically like Cracker Jacks. And then they threw like licorice ropes. And nobody's buying Cracker Jacks unless it's only because it's part of the song. That's the only reason. I think the best value was like the chocolate malt cups or like a hot dog, because it was like $3 at the time. And this is many years ago. I remember just because running around, the chocolate malt cups were super light. You just walk around. I think I would actually ask to do double cases of those, which was crazy. I think I was like the malt cup guy, like in my time.
I see people with, sometimes they have, it's like neck savers, like they're like
oh yeah.
Is that something that like the vendors bring and they add on, or does that just come with whatever you
have to even like a strap, you have to even buy your own. It's like in Shawshank, he's like, you have to buy your own gun, that's tax deductible, so it's like whatever. So the same thing, you have to buy like a strap, which I didn't even have. The other ones like had a strap, like a Pepsi or like water, like you just whatever. It really killed your back. But there was also a hierarchy of like where you wanted to be. Like again, that's the math. Hey, am I going to take malt cups downstairs or peanuts upstairs, but not, and so many people are here? When is it? It's like April or May. Like, listen, I like hot chocolate. I still remember on Mother's Day of one year, it was a Cubs Sox game. It was May 14th or May 15th or something on a Sunday of Mother's Day. And it was so cold, and I was in the upper deck, and I sold hot chocolate. I sold like 21 cases of hot chocolate. Yeah. I was in the left field commissary, and I didn't have to cross home plate the whole game.
That's amazing. I was just wondering from a strategy standpoint, if people are going into the level of detail of factoring in not just temperature, but based on time of game, 1:20 or 7 o'clock. And if they're thinking about where the sun is, are you taking first baseline or third baseline? The wind? Do people obsess to that level of saying, like, where is it going to be hotter?
Halfway through my time doing it, at some point they made this BS rule that you can only go in the 100 section or the 200 section, which was really garbage. And then they also said a thing like, you can't go down there and whatever. And like, you would also be like, hey, is there a vendor down there? And you'd have to find your way. So like, one of the skills I think I learned very quickly was having to find the free market, like find the right opportunity. Where is it? Oh, let me look at somebody who's not up there and go and see it. But also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, again, another time halfway through my time vending, I just, for some reason, started doing this Will Ferrell, Harry Carey voice when I did it. And I like really got so into it. I like had the classes because I got so bored of just saying peanuts. So for some reason, I just started watching this Will Ferrell, Harry Carey. I'd be like, hey, who wants to get crazy? Come on. If you were a hot dog and you were starving, would you eat yourself? I know I would. And people would love it. Because it was Chicago, it was Wrigley at the time, so people knew exactly what I'm talking about. But I would just be like, Kosuke Fukudome is spelled backwards. This is Ima Doku Ikusak. And I want to wish a happy birthday to Bertha Stevens from Peoria, Illinois, 96 years young, lifelong Cub fan. Hey, how you doing? And then it would really help because if I was selling water. And it was a hard day selling water. I'd be like, anyone not discover beer yet? Anyone the designated driver? Anyone pregnant? I would just walk around. So I would do that. It was my first foray. I'm like, oh, I'll be write creative lines here to get attention here, and to be like, all right, well, just.
That was your first kind of bit.
Probably.
Those were your first stand-up days.
Probably just I became pretty famous with it. Meaning people were like, hey, I saw you in right field and rubber band. I'm like, no, you were all the same. You're all wearing Cubs hats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you'd be all over social media now if you were doing that.
Oh my god.
If social media existed back then.
That's what I'm saying. When Ryan Dempster, who also does a Harry Carey impression, I wish there was the ability to be. I did a promo for WGN Radio once. A guy saw me and was in the stands.
Cool.
But it also helped me realize certain things that humor was a huge part of life doing this job. Because at one point, the ushers, I really became pretty famous with that thing. That this usher one time, he said to me, hey, there's this guy in this area who's terminally ill. He's not gonna last so long. Can you do your shtick in front of him? The guy didn't speak. And I was doing it in front of him, and I shook the guy's hand and whatever. And then 2 weeks later, the usher was oh yeah, that guy passed away. And I was like, oh my gosh, this thing that would have gotten me kicked out of class in school is actually a really powerful thing that you can do, especially in the state of the world we have right now, where you can bring humor to people going through the hardest of times and just make a difference to them. It's this really powerful thing.
I'll bet that in that experience, you both left an equal impression on one another. Is that you created a memory for that family and gave a little levity in that moment for that person who was suffering, while they also inspired you and realized that this is an opportunity that you can actually bring good into the world and affect people positively through your skill, your craft, and your art.
Thank God. I did the impression for Harry Carey's widow at one point.
Wow.
Again, it was so cool. And also that at the time, the Cubs bullpen was right along right by the third base and first base side. So one of the third base side. And you could literally if you wanted to, you could touch their heads right there. So I would just do this thing all day, and these pitchers would hear me all the time, and I would be like, hey, wants ice cream, come on! And Carlos Marmol, the Cubs closer at the time, turned around and was like, get out of here. And one time, I was just having a hard day or whatever. I was like, hey, Carlos, why don't you let me worry about my job? You worry about yours. And then and a few days later, he blows the save for the Cubs. And I just wanted another press conference ever. Carlos, what do you think? He's like, well, this vendor was doing this horrible Bill Cosby impression.
No, my God.
So distracted. Yeah, but getting in a fight with Carlos Marmol was it was really being able to do it was fun. Again, so at one point I would have the big glasses, and then this is more entrepreneurial. I bought them, and then people would be like, can I buy them from you? And I would have a backup pair with me, and I would sell people I'll give you $20. I was like, okay, great. Spent $4 on them. It was great. There's probably a personality type of, are you an AL person or are you an NL person?
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. If you're a Mets fan or a Cubs fan, you've been through some stuff in life.
You're a little more humble, and you're probably nicer disposition.
Yeah, my business cards literally say some were popular in high school, others became comedians.
This is not a spoiler. It's literally in the title of this episode that you are a stand-up comedian. Was that something that you knew from an early age that you always wanted to do? When did you know that you wanted to go into comedy?
Well, I usually actually say what people say. Why'd you become a comedian? I'm like, I don't have other skills, which is ironic because that's the name of the podcast. But
We're gonna debunk that myth on the show because
myth right now.
I already know that you've got a lot more skills based on your experience as a vendor.
But are they usable?
Very usable.
I remember being into stand-up comedy a lot as a kid. Like I remember watching like Seinfeld's I'm Telling You for the Last Time, like a pivotal stand-up special. And I think my dad was really into comedy in terms of George Carlin and like Rodney Dangerfield. I think I remember trying to quote George Carlin to like kids my age, which is so
very hard to do.
How old are you? I very much was like watching things that was not appropriate for my age in more ways than one.
You're trying to relate to your friends. You know, like when your boss comes down and hard on you, it's like, what are you talking about?
So
yeah.
I also think it's like just your sense of humor is formed by your media. I like loved The Simpsons as a kid. The Simpsons and Seinfeld, the show, are probably like two very big formative shows probably in my like psyche.
Did the comedy come naturally to you, or was it more of a learned skill where you were learning how to craft a joke and then put it into like performance?
So that's the thing. I think the performance element is the hardest part. And I still don't think I have that. Oh yeah, I write good jokes and I'll get up on stage and I deliver them fine. But like there are people that are just like performative masters, and like, you know, Sebastian Maniscalco, Modi is excellent. Elon Gold, like this,
they have a great
like,
presence.
The performance, it's the performance element, which I still have to work on because I'm just like, oh, this is what I thought of when I was in the bathroom. So let's see how this goes.
But I think there's some people that the performance piece is their strong suit and they're great. And while they're obviously good at developing comedy and material, maybe that's just not their favorite part. Maybe their favorite part and their strength is the performance part.
Well, like I think we said, I would love to be like in a writer's room type of thing. Elon Gold, who I've become like friendly with over the last several years, I did a show with him and I like pitched him a couple jokes and stuff like that. I helped write with this thing called Purim Funny Story. It was about like the Jewish holiday of Purim, the Purim story, but like over a Zoom thing. And Howie Mandel kills it as Mordechai. He does a phenomenal job. It's really great. And some of my favorite lines were like written in this, which is like such a joy when you like, or like a joke I've written and be like, oh, that gets performed. That's such a cool thing. It's like learning a language. You just like insert like, okay, this is a joke. And the way The Simpsons was a good educational way for it because it's not a spoon-fed joke. It's like a scenario. And here's a comment.
Yeah.
You have to have a little bit of a intelligence to get it.
Yeah, no,
or
for
else
sure.
You're just like,
there are a lot of references that I never got because I was too young.
Yeah, and then you're rewatching, you're like, oh, this is hilarious. Yeah. So it really formed my sense of humor, my sensibilities. I think like even in elementary school, we did this thing called like just a ripoff of SNL called like Friday Morning Live. And apparently in my high school yearbook, I said like, what are you going to do in 10 years? And like mine said stand-up comedian. Again, because I don't have other, like there was never any other like lightning strike moment where, I don't know, I think I did a project once on like being a veterinarian. I'm like, they don't make enough money for the amount they go to school for, and I don't love animals that much.
That's probably a key component to the success in that role.
Yeah, when the shows go well, there's like this like feeling. I'm like, oh, this is what I was meant put on this earth to do. This is what I was meant to do. And like when it doesn't go well, I'm like, maybe I should have been an accountant.
Or that's just the learning process. It's like when you're in flow, you're in your sweet spot, and you know you were meant to do this.
Yeah.
But in order to get there, you have to cut your teeth. You gotta figure it out, and you gotta bomb. You gotta work with a difficult audience. You gotta work a really difficult room. Give me your nightmare scenario of what kind of room you're in.
Most of my gigs are for like synagogue dinners and like synagogue social events. So it's already dealing with a lot of Orthodox Jews who are often their arms folded. All right. And again, a lot of Jewish people are just very much like, I could do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just decided to become a nursing home administrator instead. I could do that. I just don't like whatever. Like, you know, my nephew does it. He's a putz, but whatever. He could be one of you.
He's on the Instagrams, the face space.
During COVID, I did like so many shows over Zoom, which was a whole other nightmare of just, because I realized early on that you can't have everyone muted or else it's like literally giving a lecture and it's just super boring.
It's awful.
And you can't have everyone unmuted because then there's too much noise and then it's whatever. So I figured it out early that you have to have 5 or 6 people unmuted. And that way you have some sort of like laughter audience and that everyone else can feed off that. That was the challenge. But what I was saying with Zoom is that I said that one of the best jokes I got over during COVID was I said 40 is a really holy number in Judaism. You know, Moses was on Mount Sinai for 40 days. The Israelites were in the desert for 40 years. A free Zoom session shuts off after 40 minutes. Killed in 2020. That one killed in 2020.
Really
so
funny.
many COVID jokes, so many Zoom specific jokes.
The downside to your strategy of having 5 people muted is that I was actually one of those 5 people. I don't know if you remember this. 2020, I was unmuted. And as a result, the other hundreds of people who were on this thing heard me cackling. I don't know if they were annoyed by it, but I was the person they were like, dude, you're so loud. And I was like, I was asked to be.
That's the point. I literally would have these calls with these synagogues and they say, how does this work? I said, oh, can you have the 5 or 6 people who are like good laughers? Can you have them? Because sometimes they would pick those people and I would say that was my instructions. They would pick those people and they'd be like, you guys are not doing your job.
Well, they sure identified me.
In fact, during one of those Zoom sessions, I remember, because I have a joke where I say that every synagogue is like hesitant to have a comedian, or every Jewish organization is hesitant to have a comedian because they've had bad experiences in the past. I know this because that's what they tell me. And I paused at that moment, and one of the unmuted people was like, yeah, we went to this dinner the other night, last year, and the comedian was terrible. And I said, we can all hear you. And it was great. I said, I'm just trying to be better than that person. It was phenomenal.
That's funny. That is ridiculous.
Zoom was a whole nother animal. I did 100 shows over Zoom in 2020, 2021. Otherwise, I would have gotten real rusty. And I was able to like really do it in a really hard time for people like around the world. It was just like being able to like really just give them something that like give them laughter and not
only that, but see, you're an essential worker. I mean, I do think that you did add levity to a really difficult time. People are struggling, mental health and stuff. I do think it was great, but also as difficult as it is, probably the worst room to be a stand-up comedian is a Zoom call. It's probably awful. However, I do think, especially during that time, you probably expedited some of your exposure because of the sheer number of people that were sitting and listening to you.
It's true.
Participated either by choice or forced to be there. And you probably got your name out a lot faster on the circuit than just relying on word of mouth and social media.
That's a good point. I mean, there was definitely a lot more word of mouth. Usually for synagogue entertainment, there's usually like 7 things that they could do. So it's like a casino night, a mentalist, a musician, trivia, a comedian, and it's pretty much just goes around. But like you couldn't have half of those things during COVID. So it was just like, I guess we're going to do comedy if it works.
You were one of the few comedians with little integrity, whereas most of them would say, no, I'm not doing that. And you're like, oh, absolutely, I'll do that.
My integrity was so little. I'm just like, I really need to make money during this time. And I could do it in pajamas. It was great. I would be able to do 4 in a night on a Saturday night, which normally I can't because of travel. But like Shabbat would end in New York, I'd do it, and then Chicago, and then LA. And then I did 3 or 4 in one night. It was great.
These big name comedians, they're headlining 2 shows a night sometimes. You're doing 4.
4 over Zoom for Orthodox Jews.
All right. So for those who don't know, like you're Jewish, you're a stand-up comedian, and
surprise.
You primarily surprise if you the first 4 hours of this weren't obvious. You primarily cater to Jewish and mostly Orthodox community for your audience. What's it like to write material for a very specific audience?
So it's interesting because, first of all, people ask me if I wear a yarmulke on stage or in real life, and I was like, yeah, because if I did this, he would be like, no, he doesn't look Jewish at all. Like, you know, well aware. But part of the reason that I segment myself to the Orthodox community is it's what I know. I grew up Orthodox, going to Jewish Orthodox day school for many years. So I just have this like wealth of knowledge and experience of the awkwardness of it, of what you learn and stuff like that. So I just find it traversing to other denominations a little bit tricky at times because I don't necessarily know what references translate. It's more that I wrote these jokes and my crowd built around this because that's what I'm talking about. I really do have ambitions to jump to, let's say, a conservative crowd or reform, and I can probably do that to a big extent. It's just a matter of having that much material having the insider experience sometimes, I just don't know. I'm like, hey, if I use this reference, are you going to understand? I don't even know how people on this podcast would be like, hey, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Right. No, I don't either. This is somewhat of a first. I mean, we've had other religious guests, and they talk about whatever's important to them or whatever's meaningful to them. But my job is not to maybe over-prescribe to our audience, but rather to say, for some people, this will resonate, for others, it won't, even if you're aware or unaware of the subject matter. That's somewhat irrelevant.
But
do you find yourself like maybe avoiding writing material that is secular, not specifically religious, because you have a brand?
No. It's one of those things. I think it's, let's say, Nate Bargatze or something, for example. I don't know if he specifically is like, I'm going to write clean material. I mean, I think now he probably does, but I think it's just a matter of what your voice is and what your, partly, you know, one of the business terms is like unique selling point. And it's like, you know, you talk about, let's say, some entertainers who got big for being like, let's say, observant or Orthodox, and then suddenly they're not or whatever. And then you're like, it's not as appealing anymore with that. Right. And for me, I'm not saying that's why I do it for that thing, but I'm like, oh, there's a really big gap and a really big hole in the culture that is not addressed. Orthodox Jews don't really feel represented in media and in the world. And you see that because every depiction of a Jew is my grandmother's kosher or like a diamond dealer Hasidic guy on Law and Order or whatever. And it's never me who like prays 3 times a day but has seen every episode of Seinfeld. And it's frustrating because then like you have poor depictions on shows and things like that, and like anti-Semitic stuff going on, and there isn't like, well, the Jewish community, and you're like, which Jewish community are you talking about? Like I don't know, like, not to get serious for a second, but like a guy, like an Orthodox Jew in Chicago that we know got shot, and like I found out about it really late that happened, and it happened. Granted, it happened over a holiday, but like the fact that I don't know, a huge story should be everywhere. Orthodox Jewish guy gets shot in a big Orthodox Jewish community, and that's not like national. Huge
walking to synagogue,
and like that's crazy. The best representation I think of Orthodox Judaism is like Jackie Mason on The Simpsons playing Krusty's father in the first episode where they depict him, because Herschel Christofsky and they like Bart and Lisa are like doing research. They're doing like, they actually do accurate sources of like, you look up these sources, they're real. There was a time when people actually cared about Orthodox representation, and what I found my comedy being able to do is really speak to a demographic that is very genuine and authentic to me, and without pandering, which again, that also happens. Sometimes you try to, what I find a lot of, you know, matzah and kugel and
stereotypical.
Yeah, Mrs. Basil did very well at this for a while, and then it a little bit jumped the shark in some of the way they talked about things. But I think it just like did you just like Wikipedia Judaism right now?
I think the same thing goes for Muslim profiles, is that there is a depiction in Western media of this is like the quintessential stereotypical, this is all we know. Like we know
were 5 the bad guy on the show 24.
Oh my, always.
And
right.
that was it. And then the movie The Big Sick with Kumail Nanjiani. I was like, this is great because there is like modern Orthodox Muslims out there, essentially.
Same thing with like Mo Amer and his show, his stand-up comedy, but also Rami Youssef in the show Rami. I think these things are breaking the normative, the stereotypes that a lot of Western media and comedy and what we know about these religions that are rich and have a lot more to it than just, in our case, matzah and gefilte fish.
Yeah, it's really annoying to me because there is such a rich culture there, and there's such a rich mine of humor there that you could do in a tasteful way. Like I said, watch this episode of The Simpsons again. It's like the show Stissel is a really good example because they happen to be Hasidic, but it's not necessary. It's about that, but it's about humans and siblings and kids with their families. And that the backdrop is that they're Hasidic Jews.
Same thing with My Big Fat Greek Wedding when it came out in whenever that was, 2000.
Yeah,
is that it basically shed light on this rich culture and how being Greek is just the subject, but it's so relatable in many other cultures, many other religions, and just families. We're all the same. We all have the same values, and maybe our belief system is slightly different, but our values and how we live and what's important to us is pretty much the same, and it's very relatable.
Yeah, I mean, and I think from the Jewish element, it's really just a lot of shame and whatever the equivalent of white guilt is, even Jewish guilt of like people are just don't want to be associated with those types of Jews, whoever that may be. And then you get the whole political spectrum too. But that's really, I think what it comes from, where they're like, we're the good Jews type of thing. And it's like really yucky and gross because anti-Semitism is looming large, and they're not caring how often you go to synagogue with it, with some of that. I think my comedy, other than the fact that it's what's natural and stems to me, going back full circle to the vending thing, that it's finding an aisle that there's no vendor down the line, down there, and being like, hey, these people really could use some Pepsi right now or something like that. And being like, but I also just like, this is what comes natural to me. I write like this voice. Modern Orthodox Judaism, I think, is a lot of that, of taking the things from my past, from like the Jewish part of me, plus the regular culture part, and like fusing the two.
What you're describing, Gay Hendricks wrote a book called Zone of Genius. And what you're describing is you're not seeking out to learn information and try to make it part of your comedy routine, but you're developing great comedy based on what you know and your market and your audience. And what you're also describing, whether it's in vending or in comedy, it's product market fit.
Yeah, and I also think there's an element of, there's a concept in Judaism called like a Kiddush Hashem, where it's, are you making a good name for Jews, essentially?
Right.
And the fact that I don't curse in my act. When I do a show at your synagogue, I was like, I say the people will be laughing and the rabbis will be cringing most of the time. And the ones that are is because they're very heightened sensitivity. Like, you will not find most comedians cleaner than with the stuff that I do for the most part. And
by the way, sometimes the rabbis who are cringing, it's not because it's inappropriate, but rather because it's exploiting a reality that is true and sad.
Yeah, like, it could be. Yeah, no, for sure.
You might be making light of and levity of a serious subject. And sort of part of what makes it funny is because of how true this is. But I think I hate that he's right.
But it's right. But I think like somebody sees me with a yarmulke, and I have jokes about a yarmulke and stuff like that. And I think it dispels some of the superiority notions that there is that people may have this poor association with. But I'm just like, hey, this is my life, that you may have never met Orthodox Jew or know about it. And I'm going to tell you, this is my thing. I'm going to hopefully write more material that's for a wider audience if I get that inspiration. But I bet you right now, I'm like, hey, I could probably do 2 hours on synagogue stuff. And it's just, but I remember being jealous watching a John Mulaney special where he talks about like how they changed mass, how they changed like the text, the words in the mass, and he like says it and the rest of the crowd finishes it. I'm like, how lucky are you that 1 billion people are Catholic, that you can just do this joke and I quote a random like verse from the Torah. I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
We have these moments that Jews are trying to entertain ourselves, especially at synagogue. And I said, you know how synagogue boredom, we all want to avoid synagogue boredom. Yeah. You know how synagogue boredom is real? If there's a piece of paper in front of you, you're going to read it. Doesn't matter what it is. Announcements, newsletters, Jewish books. It's like when you go to the bathroom without your phone, so you start reading the Febreze and the soft bottle.
I noticed you constantly taking notes. Are you writing down things just for general life, or is everything you're writing down a potential source of material for comedy?
It's a little of both in terms of remembering. But when I write something down, I'm like, oh, I need to remember this, because there's just like a way if you say something in conversation that's funny, I'm like, oh, this is a good thing to explore. What you have to do as a comedian is write everything down. Write everything you think of. Your memory is not as good as you thought it was.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges, and you can find it, is about like picking a path that like is risky, is scary, and stuff like that. So it's like doing comedy. It's like there's such a notion of doing what you love. So doing something that you enjoy, there is something really valuable in that.
I believe that is very true.
In between vending and comedy, I was doing comedy on the side probably since 2010, 2011, 14 years or so. At this point, I worked at a place called B&H, which is like an electronic store in New York City.
I spent a lot of money there.
Yeah, exactly. I worked there for 5 years in like customer service. And after that, I worked at a startup for 2 years working from home. And like just a lot of things that I didn't have a background in. And it really gave me an education. I was there for 2 years. And my boss, he also saw that like comedy was like a big part of my life. And he kind of said at the end of December of 2022, started there February 2021. At the end of December 2022, I was like, also like randomly getting gigs and like having to take off. And he was just like, yeah, at the end of December, I think we're going to call it really whatever. And as hard as it was to have that, it was enormous relief that I was like, clearly this is not the right thing for me. Yeah. And whether or not, and I'm just like too nervous about bills and stuff to like quit myself or just be like, hey, this is something like failure as an option and stuff like that. This was better for me that I was let go, because otherwise complacency and being content where you are is not necessarily a good thing. Since the beginning of 2023 until through 2025, the last 2.5 years, I've been doing comedy full time, which is really cool, because if you would have asked me 10 years ago, hey, you're writing jokes about inside baseball synagogue stuff, is that going to help support a family? Granted, my wife works and has insurance, but which is not important. But I think there is a very, back to what I said at the beginning about being a vendor throughout college and whatever, when people are like getting internships, which I understand is a long-term thought, but I was like, I enjoyed this so much. There was such inherent value in this work. And I think we have a very skewed sense of what the value of jobs are, because we're like, oh, it's financial security and financial comfortability and benefits. But to be able to do something that is so off the beaten path that like you said before, you said people are just like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. Like, you do comedy, I wish I had the ability to do that. And being able to just do something that is so traditional, like up in the air, where George Clooney fires J.K. Simmons at the beginning and makes him feel better, but he says, you started out working as a chef and then you came to work here. How much do they pay you to give up on your dreams? Yeah. And he's like, $28,000 a year. And he's like, when were you ever going to go back to what you wanted to do? And I'm very fortunate and I'm very lucky that I do this thing that I love most of the time. I like it most of the time. Granted, I love being a vendor at Wrigley Field too, but I really feel like this is what I was put here to do. And I'm grateful for that I'm able to do that.
It's a blessing to be able to do that, and also to find the confidence, conviction. How long actually do you think it would have taken for you to get to where you're at now, where you're focusing on full time, you're getting gigs, had you not lost or quit your job before this?
Probably, or may not ever have happened. And there's a certain point where like, me and my wife would have conversations and be like, maybe you'll like get this position and then you'll still do comedy on the side. But then you're like really just like halfway doing everything, which is fine. I did it pretty responsibly. Just to crunch the numbers for a sec, I was doing comedy for years while making $50,000 a year, which meaning $50,000 a year from comedy while I was doing other jobs. So I wasn't like completely just like, hey, I'm going to start doing this thing and develop a passion project and stuff like that. It was something I was always doing. Yeah, but sometimes you need that either sign from the universe to say, hey, this is what the kick in the butt you need to light that fire to get you to do that. Because I don't know if I ever would have necessarily. I don't know if I have the stones, for lack of a better term, or the gall to just make that decision, like really go for it. And I was forced to, in a way, but again, there would have been this like half-assing kind of like a lot of stuff where I'm just like, yeah, I do this, but I also do comedy. But yeah, I do this, but I also do comedy. And it really also, that really first year of doing comedy really gave me the opportunity to say yes to things, which is really important, because the fact that I was able to do a podcast with Ami Kozak and talk about an idea, and then it developed into this thing that we've built over the last couple of years called J-Sketch, which is unbelievable and completely like fulfilling, being able to have that creative outlet to do something different is an incredible gift.
Do you mind sharing some of the economics?
Sure.
Can you help us understand a little bit about the economics of being a stand-up comedian, essentially self-employed, what your overhead is for the job, and what kind of a living you might be able to make?
Yeah. Thankfully, over the last couple of years, I'll share that I've made a good 6 figures. In the last couple of years, say in the $150,000 ballpark, something like that's gross, but gross in 2 ways that I send the amount of money I make and how much I make. The challenging thing is that, my wife works at a hospital, and that's insurance is like a really big thing, because if you're normally self-employed, insurance is like be a killer, and it's just really hard. There isn't a ton of overhead. Usually when I travel for a gig, I usually have that baked in where somebody says, hey, we're going to pay you for doing this show, but also we'll pay for your travel. That's generally assumed, especially these days if Newark Airport is terrible. But there isn't a ton of overhead, but I am able to, because I'm self-employed, I'm able to expense things like internet or driving to a gig and gas and things like that. And there is a lot that you are able to utilize for that. But
because you're running essentially your own brand,
yeah.
Who is responsible for all of your content through social media and other stuff? Are you posting your own things? Do you have anybody who's helping you at all on your business?
Not exactly. Not really. I mean, I have one person who she's helping with kind of some of the stuff that I don't have the brain for, like maybe design stuff for flyers or a media kit or reaching out to places. Because it's also like when you reach out to a place, it's a tricky thing, because when you reach out to a place, it's like, hey, can you want to hire me for your thing? But like and as much as I meekly say that, I know that like I do have value that I'm providing to you, that you have a organization that needs this, that has this really stuffy dinner that nobody wants to go to. And
right.
If you, at the end of the day, if people walk away from your dinner and say that wasn't that bad because the comedian was entertaining for 25 minutes, then there is real value in that. And
if you're elevating the overall experience for an event,
yeah,
huge.
I literally say that for like charity parlor meetings or things like that, where at the end of the day, they will have to get people in the door. They got to get funding or donors. If people have this positive association and say, hey, that was a really fun event, and they had this thing, and I associate with this company or this organization now, then that's a huge thing. I think within my skill set, really there is the unique selling point of being able to deliver Jewish material in a very authentic way that will resonate with a certain audience. Not so many people can do what I do, which, not to toot my own horn, but as I said at the beginning, there were plenty of comedians that organizations have had. They've had a comedian, it didn't go well, and they're like, well, it's the only thing they like write off and say, we're never doing that again. And which is,
it's can you imagine if they once had a bad experience with a caterer and then decided we're never serving food again?
Or music, they're always like, yeah, well, we have this guy. Nah, we're not having music anymore. Like
this guy who was really too excited.
It only happens with comedy, and I probably in this space, because comedy is so subjective and it's just risky. And then it's risky. You think it's risky as an entertainment, it's risky as a career. Now, but again, no. Thankfully, the economics of it also is that I know a lot of it is based on the Jewish calendar. So I know that like my slower season will probably be like June, July, somewhat of the summer. Usually during the months of the high holidays, September and October are a little bit slower. And then from November to March, when Shabbat ends early, I know that like Saturday nights, people are like, we got to have an event for our synagogue. And we already did a mentalist, we did a casino night, we did a trivia thing, and there's only 4 things to do. So that's why when places are like, hey, we're not having comedy this year. I'm like, all right, it'll come back around again.
When you do an event, does the host or the organization that's hiring you have exclusive rights to your visit in that city, or are you allowed to find other gigs since you're there?
That's a good question. They don't have exclusive rights, but I do try to be a mensch about it in some way and be like, I'll ask if they hire me first. I'm like, is it okay if I do this crowd because it's a different
it's not going to detract from that ticket sales.
I hope not.
There's some obvious skills in being a comedian. Are there any skills that you believe you've acquired or maybe even realized that you had that aren't so obvious, but now you realize are instrumental in what you do in being a comedian?
Yeah, I think one is I probably have tougher skin than I give myself credit for. going in front of a bunch of people who are just not laughing, which will happen many times throughout a comedian's career, is not something most people want to do. Everybody quotes the Seinfeld thing about at a funeral. He said most people would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy because public speaking is the number one fear. So the fact that I can public speak is great. I have a thicker skin than I realized. I think a little bit of a perseverance that I don't give myself credit for. But vending and comedy, I would say, are the two things that I've really stuck with. Maybe swimming a little bit, but that I'm like, let me do this for long enough and get good at it. Being able to really think on my feet, and that's something that a lot of you see on Instagram. People do crowd work, and it's great if you can do it with material behind it, as like, hey, you need to do this. I'm not so great at crowd work, and I just don't do it. And part of that is just the fear of I'm losing control. I don't know where I'm going to go with next, because maybe it's from my attention, and I'm just like, I'm going to lose sight of this. I have to keep my eye on the ball here. And people are like, don't people love hecklers? No, they hate it. Just because you see hecklers and comedians can handle it doesn't mean just because a pilot can handle the plane, if like a Sully situation, doesn't mean he wants that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a whole separate skill set to be somebody who does crowd work, who seeks it out.
I think one of the most important things I have from comedy is being able to stick with something. It's really, and I kind of said this before, but being able to stick with this and being like, no, I'm going to keep adding to my material and amass something, and like, and I would say like leave an imprint, and it'll be like, there is a big thing of what difference did you make? If you get philosophical, what difference did you make on this earth? I'd be like, I hope people would be like, yep, they saw my material, and people were embarrassed, but no, they saw it, and hopefully you made somebody laugh. That can change, like, as I said with the vending, like I can change someone's whole day and can change everything.
Thank you for taking this much time out of your day and your schedule to share your insights, your experience, your skills, and even the inspiration to people listening, because whether it's comedy or something literally completely different than this, the message that I think was very impactful for me is you really have to commit. You got to essentially take the jump, the leap. If you want to get that dream to materialize, you really have to commit to it. And I have a lot of respect for you for doing that. So
thank you for. I love chatting, and let's do it again.
I want to thank Eli for being our guest today on the show, and to you, our listeners, for joining us on this episode of Transferable Skills. Remember, the skills you've gained can take you anywhere. Until next time, keep exploring those transferable skills.